I want to say good morning to each and every last one of y'all. I hope y'all having a blessed morning. We're going to change the pace this morning. I want to talk about cult leaders, how it going today. I want to talk about young lady that got abused. I have some videos. I want to shout out to King World. I want to shout out let the fresh in, and here we go. Well, I'm gonna tell you a little story about it before I play it. It's a co-leader go by the name of Nature Boy, aka Eligio Bishop, and his wife. Right now, he been locked up in Cobb County in Georgia for 2 years now, and they're just not going into jury, picking out jury, and it started today, and I guess the actual court gonna be on the 26th. He had about 15 or 16 women's young ladies, I'm gonna say that, had their minds messed up. So here we go.
I've told every single one of my family and friends to sign up for this new 2024 no-cost dental program.
An absolutely daunting task. There's not a lot understood about cults and cult dynamics and cult psychology, but certain cases can set the precedent. So in the future, we can really help and protect other victims, especially when they come forward. And I'm really happy to say that Nature Boy, aka Eligio Bishop's trial, might do just that. Just like NXIVM did before it. The more people come forward and the more we have legal documentation of what coercive control looks like, the easier it will be to get justice for survivors in the future. So we are going to be looking into...
I'm going to stop it for 1 minute.
Forward. And I'm really happy to say that Nature Boy, aka Eligio Bishop's trial, might do just that. Just like NXIVM did before it. The more people come forward and the more we have legal documentation of what coercive control looks like, the easier it will be to get justice for survivors in the future. So we are going to be looking into all of that today. I am so excited to give you guys these updates. So sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in.
And her name is Let the Fresh In. Let the fresh Iran.
Hi everyone, welcome back, or welcome if you're brand new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cult, true crime, and cult psychology. I release a couple videos a week on one of these topics. Sometimes it might be a
Today, it might be providing an update regarding a cult we've been covering. So please check out the link. I'll actually put it on this side. If you aren't up to date, please go ahead and watch these videos first. Now that you're all up to date, we can dive right in. So Nature Boy, aka Eligio Bishop's trial is tomorrow, and I am really happy to share that 2 expert witnesses have been announced, including Rick Ross himself.
Hello, how
So
you
if
doing?
don't
We are
know
talking
who
about
Rick Ross is, he is one
a
of
cult
the
leader named
true
Alicia
pioneers when it
Bishop,
comes to discussing cults and
aka
protecting
Nature
people from getting
Boy,
involved in
about his
cults. And the fact that
court
he is an expert
update.
witness could really change the game for future allegations and survivors of cults. It's really, really exciting to
They
think
got 3
that
of them that's
this
testifying
case could potentially change the game
testifying
for future
against
survivors.
him.
So I am really excited
That
about
was
that.
there.
The state also announced another expert witness. Her name is Amanda Blanchard, and she is the director of victim services for DeKalb County in Georgia. I mean, she works in the DA's office, and so she knows exactly what a dangerous person looks like, and she knows the dynamics that occur within a DV relationship. And I am so excited that these 2 expert witnesses are going to be there advocating for these survivors. In case you're not totally up to speed, 3 witnesses came forward a couple years ago because of the treatment that they were experiencing under the hands of Eligio Bishop, aka Nature Boy, within his dangerous Carbon Nation cult. So now he is being held in DeKalb County without bond. He is charged with 1 count of R-word, 1 count of false imprisonment, and 3 counts of, I'm just going to read this because my tongue keeps getting tied trying to say this, 3 counts of prohibition on nude or sexually explicit electronic transmissions. So basically recording women having intercourse with him and then posting that up on Instagram and even Pornhub. Now, there was a pre-trial, and I actually bought the transcript of that pre-trial because I've been way too curious about how this case is going to move forward, and I am so excited that the expert witnesses are there, and I just had to read the transcript. So I went ahead and bought it, and we are going to read through all of the witness statements. And what I think that the lawyer for the state who is advocating for these survivors, he's doing such a great job at creating a picture of what coercive control looks like, how people got involved in the cult, how they were convinced to stay in the cult. And I think now that the judge has heard this and we're going into the trial tomorrow, I am so excited to see that a lawyer is actually setting such a fantastic precedent for what this coercive control looks like. Before we jump right in, I want to say these 3 women coming forward to share their story, they are literal heroes and they could be helping so many people. So I just want to quickly say thank you for going on the record, because thanks to you going on the record, we're able to hopefully stop this guy from the abuses. And I hope that your journey through healing is going well. Okay, let's jump right in. So we're going to start with the first witness. I skipped a few pages because it was just kind of like pleasantries between the judge and the lawyers. So this is the state's lawyer questioning the first witness. Hi, Kendra. How old are you today? I'm 30 years old. And how did you first come to learn about Eligio Bishop? Gets right into it, establishes how this person heard about what was going on. She says, on the internet, on social media. He asks, and approximately when was that you first learned about him? I first learned about him in 2017. And how old would you have been in 2017? She says 23, 24 years old. And what was going on in your life at that time? Where were you? She says, I lived in Seattle, Washington. I was working, going to school, but I was also having some issues in my life, just personally and in relationships and things, and not really knowing what I wanted to do next in life. And so finding him on the internet was like something I thought at the time would help me, you know? He had a lot of information and things that I felt like about life that would benefit me. So we've established she was in somewhat of a vulnerable position, right? She was wondering what she wanted to do with her life. She's young, she's in school, she's recognizing that she might want a different life than what she currently has. He asks, and how long did that sort of online interest in Mr. Bishop last? She says, I found him. I started listening to him in December.
So as y'all see, one of the young ladies that's testifying, she was 23 of age. She had her life ahead of her, and she one of the young ladies that made a false move off these peoples on the internet.
Good thing you and Mom got those policies. I had no idea how expensive all this would be.
I know.
Of 2017, and I actually ended up joining him on December 10th, 2017. And so I only knew about him for a short while. What caused you to join him in terms of like, how did that logistically happen? And this is interesting because it shows a tactic called flying monkeys, where instead of Nature Boy or Bishop actually reaching out and trying to get people to come join him, he sends other people to have these intimate relationships with the women that they're targeting to bring them to the compound or to wherever Nature Boy is at the time. And this is something we didn't talk about in the Bentinho video, but it's
who you hear talking
he would actually have his girlfriend at the time basically like recruit other women to come and join him wherever they were. So they feel a little disarmed, they feel safer. They're like, oh, this woman is inviting me, saying it's such an amazing experience, I should go. Whereas here, the men surrounding Eligio are complicit. They're engaging in these personal, intimate, sometimes romantic relationships on the internet and then convincing the women to come and join. And then when they join, Nature Boy's like, I want to be with her. So it's definitely the pattern. There are 3 witnesses. This is the first one. You will notice this pattern with each witness. She says, a member of his group had reached out to me, a young man around my age, and he just reached out to me and was like, so there's a little bit of lawyer jargon. Eligio's lawyer interrupts and I guess is worried that there are other witnesses in the room that he didn't want in the room. So we're going to just skip all of this and jump right back into the question. So her lawyer, or the state's lawyer rather, asks, okay, I'm sorry. You were saying that you were communicating with a young man about your age. She says, yes, through Facebook. Okay. And he reached out to me. He asks, and when you said you joined the group, where was the group located physically at the time? She says, in Texas. He says, okay. The court asks for clarification. Where was she living? She responds that she was in Seattle. So the questioning continues. Did you drive, fly? How did you end up getting there? She flew to Texas. How was that trip financed? She says, I paid for it. So when you arrived, what was your initial reaction and thoughts about the whole situation? She says, I was surprised that everyone came. Every member that was there at the time came and met me at the airport, and they were all, smiling and happy, saying, welcome home, and they were hugging me. And so my initial reaction was like, wow, this is, a lot of love. She's getting love bombed hard here. He asks how many people came at the time, and she says 15. So imagine you're going to some place you may have never been before, and 15 people show up at the airport to welcome you. Of course she's going to feel like, wow, this is a safe space. This is what love bombing looks like. So he continues to ask, and when you arrived, what happened to your personal belongings? She's like, what do you mean, like my clothes? He goes, more like if you had an ID or personal documents, credit cards, things of that nature. She says, oh yeah, credit cards, cash I was told to hand over to one of the guys there. I guess he was in charge of holding on to all of that stuff. And they were telling me that everything that is yours actually belongs to the group now. We share it all. So immediately when she gets there, they take her money and her IDs. And everything is communal. So everything she brought, she had to hand over. So, I mean, that's so instantaneous. And you think, oh, I'm a part of a tribe, I'm a part of a community. This feels nice. Especially if you're in a place where you might be needing community, seeking purpose. This might feel like, oh, this feels good. We're a tribe, we're a family. And he asks, were you able to determine who was in charge? She says, yes, Eligio Bishop was in charge. He was making all of the decisions. And he asks, how did that become apparent to you? She answers, because he was communicating with the guys at the time. Like, they were trying to get my information, to get my passport, getting information that, about me. And he was like, at first, he never really directly communicated with me. He would go through other people and they would tell me, okay, he needs this from you or whatever. And so I kind of figured like he's making the decisions. So he wasn't even personally speaking with her. And this is a tactic that cult leaders use because it puts them up on a pedestal. Like, you'll get to speak with him when you've earned speaking with him. And it also, I think, creates legally, potentially, a distance between him doing the actual taking of her documents. If it's basically outsourced to somebody else, there's a middleman. So Eligio can legally say, I didn't confiscate anything. That was that guy, homeboy over there, So he asks, and how long was it before he actually spoke to you in person? She says, well, that night, when I got there, when we got back to the house, I don't know what to name you yet, because I guess everybody had to change their name. The lawyer asked for more info. She says, he believed that, the names that were given at birth were not our actual name, but like a straw man that is being used to make you just like another number in the system. And so everyone had to change their name as part of the group. So he would always name the person. Usually he would name the person. So she had to change her name. This is, again, that lack of identity. He's trying to get you to strip away everything from your past life. And this is really kind of shocking. I feel like we don't often see cults doing this as quickly. Usually it's not like, I'm going to strip away your identity, I'm going to take all your belongings. Usually it's a very gradual process. But what's interesting with this is he does it so instantaneously, immediately. You get there, you hand over your stuff, you get a new name, and you get love bombed. And it is all an intentional tactic that he uses to get you to strip parts of yourself away and become a part of his group, become quickly ingrained, to start believing what he's believing. It's all very intentional. And it's just ironic too, because he's like, you don't want to be another label, but let me label you. Like, okay. So the lawyer then asks, what would happen if Mr. Bishop's orders or directives were disobeyed? She says, it would be an issue. He liked people obeying him. If you didn't obey in the beginning, it would be long, drawn out meetings about him and his issue with you being disobedient. Then towards the end, it even got physically violent. He asks, when you say physically violent, what she says, if he had an issue with what you were doing, he would either order somebody to slap you or he would physically hurt you. He physically would hurt you as well. Did that ever happen to you? She says, yes. Were there rules within the group? So we're establishing this pattern of coercion, abuse, punishment. I mean, the fact that he had other people hit, it's that same reporting of other people that we see in these groups all the time, where it's that same system of reporting that we see in groups all the time, because then it creates this feeling that you can't trust anyone within the groups, because they might slap you if you disobey a rule. They might run and go tell Eligio. They might write a report around you, and then you'll get punished by Eligio. And you have no one to speak to when you do, or if you do have a red flag that pops up, there's no one you can go to, because if you bring up a concern, they might go report that to Eligio. So that's how these cult leaders keep people trapped in there. And this lawyer is doing such a great job asking these questions to set up the pattern. to show the judge and hopefully the jury that this is a pattern of abusive behavior. So he asked, what sort of topics did those rules cover? She says, we couldn't use the bathroom inside. We had to use the bathroom outside, number 1 and number 2. We couldn't close the bathroom doors if you were to be in the bathroom. Like if you wanted to wash up or anything, you had to keep the door open or at least unlocked. No locked doors, that was a rule. You could only go in the kitchen when you were permitted to, only eat at times you were permitted to. And, if he didn't want to eat that day, you didn't eat. Everything was just about what he wanted to do. The controlling food intake, controlling where you go to the bathroom, you have no privacy. Were there rules related to romantic relationships within the group? Yeah, he had to approve the relationship. If you wanted to be in it, you had to bring it to him. And sometimes he would say no, and sometimes he would say yes, or sometimes he would say, well, I want you to be with this person. And so he was in charge of who you would have to be with. And what happened if you disagreed with the rule? He would say, well, if you disagree, you can leave. And the issue with that was that, it was like if you left, you were going to hell. If you left, you were going back to your lower self. You were defying everything that you set out to do in this mission of saving humanity. And so that wasn't like a viable option, but that was something he would say. You can leave or don't disagree with me because I'm God. What a beautiful picture that she paints for all of us. That's exactly why people have this confusion about, well, the door was open, or he said you could leave. Why didn't you just leave? Because I can't leave, because I think that if I leave, I'm not only giving up on myself, I'm abandoning my community. I'm abandoning all of humanity. I'm saying no to God. Then no isn't really an option anymore. I'm so proud of how she phrased that. That was she did that so well. So he asks, were you allowed to say no? She says no. What happened if you did? He would shut you up, or it would turn physically violent, or he would just try to manipulate you and talk to you into changing your mind. When you got there, you said the group was in Texas. Yes. And how long were you in Texas? For a couple of weeks. From Texas, where did you all go next? We drove.
Oh, that was close.
So I'm giving warnings to all mothers that got young daughters from age 18 and up. Watch it. I know they wrong, but talk to them. Talk to them.
Please. And then the court asks all of you, and she says yes. And he or she, the judge is a woman, the judge asks, how many of you were in the group? The witness says it was about 13 to 15 of us at the time. We had a few different cars, maybe 2 or 3. 15 people road tripping, caravanning down through Mexico into Belize. At that point, did you and Eligio have a sexual relationship at the beginning? No. And did anything happen that made you believe that the defendant developed a sexual interest in you? Yes, he told me. When he found out that I was a virgin, he told me that he knew that he could open me up and break my virginity. And how long had you been in the group when he had that conversation with you? It was about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I just can't. Did you share his interest for a sexual relationship with him? Did you want to have a relationship with him? She says no. He asks, did he ever act on this interest? She says, yeah. He asks, what happened? She answers, he invited me into his tent where he was sleeping with his wife, Velvet Marquez. And we were friends, me and her. And he said that we were just going to watch a movie. And in the middle of the movie, he told her and I that he wanted to break my virginity right there, right then. And I was scared. And she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to be involved. He was like, you're going to be right here and you're going to hold her hands and you're going to watch. And that's what happened. He broke my virginity. And the lawyer asks, did you want to have sexual intercourse that day? She says, I don't know. He says, was there ever a time that he made sexual advances where you told him no? She says, yes. So trigger warning, she's going to share that experience here. In 2018 in Mexico, I was actually in another relationship with another man there, and one of his so-called wives, not legal, one of Mr. Bishop's wives, yes, one of Bishop's women told me that he wanted to speak with me in his room. And so I went to his room and he started making moves on me and trying to kiss me. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. You know, I'm with someone else. I don't want to. And he told me to shut up. And then he took me to the bathroom and made me give him oral. And when you said he took you into the bathroom, how did that happen? He pulled me in there by hand. Did you tell him that you didn't want that to happen? Yes. And how did he respond? You don't say no to me. Shut up. Was anyone else in the room while that was happening? She says, I can't remember. He asks, okay, how did you respond after that was done? She says, I just remember telling him that I was going to be smarter now and that I was going to know more of the knowledge now and that I was just hopeful that, you know, this would make me better in some way, more enlightened. But I don't know how it really affected me besides that. I just knew I didn't matter what I wanted. I had to listen to him. And he asks, did you stay in the group for a while after that? She says, yeah. And I stayed until April of 2022 after he got arrested. He asks why. She says, I ended up getting pregnant and having a baby in the group. I think that I was truly brainwashed into believing a lot of the things that he was telling me. I think that the physical abuse played a part in just being afraid to even leave. I saw people who wanted to leave and would express wanting to leave and they would be harassed. They would be outnumbered. They would get jumped, implying other people in the group would go and attack them. I didn't have any money, any access to my money. Having my child, I didn't know how all of that was going to happen. Being in these foreign countries, you know, sometimes I shared a phone with somebody. I didn't know how I was going to be able to even reach out to anybody to get out. So much kept me there. I think just not knowing what life would be like out of the cult, because I thought that, you know, life was really what he was saying it was. Like we were in this kingdom of heaven and life outside was hell. It's so hard to hear that. And I really hope that it helps people understand where these women are coming from. What a difficult situation to be in. She was completely trapped. She was trapped. And the thing is people get trapped in groups like this when their passports and money isn't being held by the leader because of the mind games that are being played.
Hello, how you
She was facing the
doing?
threat of
Hey,
physical
mother,
violence,
sister
sexual violence.
Tamika, how you
She
doing this
had no
morning?
connection
I'm doing
to the
something
outside
different. I'm
world.
bringing awareness.
Contact
Wait,
with
let me
family member
stop
asking
this.
her help. Who's to say that the person?
How you doing, Tamika, my little sister Tamika? I'm doing awareness of a cult leader named Elijah Bishop. He's been locked up for 2 years now. He had 15, 16 in his group from the age 18 and up. Now he locked up. They're finna start his jury trial. Well, picking jury now. And he have his first court day on the 26th, the first day the court started for his wrongdoing. So I'm playing the transcript. That's what this lady named let the fresh Iran. So that's a YouTube name. Shout out to her. But she reading the transcript of what's going on about up to date his court.
Whose phone she was borrowing wouldn't go report her to Eligio. This is so sad that she experienced this, but hearing it and having it in public record, I can't even express how important this is for cult activism. The fact that this is all on record and in a southern state, we are listening to
and this happened out in Georgia,
the coercive
Atlanta, Georgia,
abuse that they faced. It is such a huge deal. And again, these women are so brave. So she gets cross-examined by Eligio's lawyer. So he wants to go back to when she initially met Mr. Bishop. And he asks, you were 23 at the time? She says, I just turned 24. 24 at that time? Yes. And so that was about 6 years ago? Yes. And you were 24 years old, living in Seattle, Washington. Is that correct? Yes. Were you a high school graduate? Yes. Were you in college? Yes. Did you have family in Seattle? Yes. Mom and dad? Mom. Okay. Is mom still alive now? Yes. Okay. And so you were raised by your mom. You were a college graduate. What did you go to school for? I went to school for apparel design and development. Which college did you go to? Seattle Central Community College. And did you have a pretty good GPA? I did. You had a bachelor's degree? No, I'm working towards it now. Okay, and so you had some sort of undergraduate degree. I was just in the process of getting my bachelor's at that time. So what I think he's attempting to do here is show that she is smart, right? That she is smart. She is capable of making her own decisions. She got a good GPA. She was in college. Like, she is choosing to go and be with Eligio, because if he can prove that she was of sound mind and had the active decision-making skills to go and make this decision, he thinks that it'll help his case with Eligio. But I think that her lawyer did an amazing job of his initial line of questioning. So he asks, and so you're on Facebook or some sort of social media in 2017 and you see Mr. Bishop, is that correct? Yes. And was that the first time you heard of him? That was the first time I had heard of him. I saw the group before I heard of him. And so I saw his video, I saw the group's video, and I didn't know that he was like the leader of the group initially, but I ended up watching more videos and saw what was the group called. I love that we know the name of all of the groups, like from start to finish, because it means, I think, and I'm not a lawyer, so I could be wrong, it means that it's all public record. It is no longer hearsay that he began Melanation. It became Carbon Nation. It's been around since 2017. So it means that all of that people experienced throughout that time, it's now accessible. And we have a timeline. If new or more victims and survivors come forward, we have this timeline, we have this evidence, it's already been filed, it's already public information. So it's just such a great opportunity of like precedent setting. At the time it was called Melanation. He asked for clarification. Did the group later change their name? Yes. What was it changed to? Carbon Nation. So when you first watched it, you didn't know Mr. Bishop was the leader? No. He didn't communicate with you or anything like that? No. So he's trying to say, like, well, Eligio didn't actually make you go join the cult. You just joined because you saw that everyone was having a good time, but he didn't, like, seek you out. But we know that that's a cult tactic. The cult leader doesn't seek people out. There was nothing about him that said he was the leader based on what you initially watched. Is that right? The first video that I seen, he wasn't in it. Okay, so ultimately, late December 2017, less than a couple of weeks after seeing these folks on the internet, you leave your mom and everything you know and go to Texas? She says, well, I want to be clear. So the first video I saw of the group was actually in May of 2017. Okay, but I didn't go on social media that much. And so I had like a hiatus off of social media. And so I went back on social media about the end of November, beginning of December in 2017. So he asked, between late November 2017 and early December 2017,
See,
you watched
this lawyer trying to cross her up.
Well,
The
it was
defense
him online
lawyer.
speaking, like teaching. And that's when I saw all of the people that he was posting on his page. And I realized, oh, all of these people are together. Okay, and so you didn't see him until after Thanksgiving of 2017. And within a week or so, you were on your way to Texas. Yes, probably right before Thanksgiving. All right, and so you paid your own way to Texas. I did. He didn't.
So that's
communicate with you
defense
until you was
lawyer
home or
that's
anything like
talking.
that.
His name is
Yes, he did.
well, his
And
Mr.
so the
Booker.
guy that was part of
Booker.
his group that reached out to me on Facebook, he FaceTimed me, and when he FaceTimed me, Eligio got in the frame and was like, "You better come on out here. We're about to leave, and so come on, get your ticket." And he commented on how nice my house was and how pretty I was and stuff. So Eligio, on record, asked her to come. Was that the first time you ever communicated with him? Yes. So he gets on FaceTime with another guy. He sees you for the first time. He tells you you're pretty, got a nice house. We're leaving. Come with us. Yes. So you agreed to go. You tell your mother, I'm going to Texas, right? She says, no. He told us not to. He told me not to.
If another witness gonna come on after her.
Anyone what I was doing.
This young
If
lady,
that is not a cult tactic, I don't know what
Kendra,
is.
she was a virgin when she went there.
Know what your left hand is about.
She was a virgin.
So I actually booked the ticket in secret, sold a lot of my belongings. I had just started financing a car. I left it in the driveway, ordered an Uber while my mom was out, and I left a note just saying that I was going to fulfill my purpose.
See, she was 24 when she went. Even though they got a mind their own, but when you trying to find yourself and you keep on listening to people on the internet, these want to be calling themselves God, calling this they can do better than God, and they lure the young ladies and young men over there, and then get them brainwashed, and they think that he is that what he say he is, and he not. But I'm glad that these three witnesses that woke up and to get their mind right and to testify against him.
Purpose in life, and I just left. Okay, so you ultimately arrived in Texas and you were greeted by Mr. Bishop and everyone else at the airport. Yes. Was there a house that they were staying in, or what is the location? They were in a house, and all 15 people, I think you said, were staying there. Yes. And so during that time frame, did you guys leave to go, I think you said from Texas to Mexico to Belize? Did you leave within a day or two? No, it was a couple of weeks. We stayed there for a couple of weeks. All right. And during that couple of weeks, were you ever alone with Mr. Bishop during that time? She says yes. Okay. The act you mentioned regarding a sexual act in the house where you indicated that he made you perform oral sex on him, was that within this house in Texas, or where did that take place? That took place in Mexico. In Mexico. Okay. And what year was that it took place? 2018. So they get some clarification on timeline. And I'm wondering if he's doing this to try to show like, okay, well, this coerced sexual act didn't happen in the United States. So is it even within our jurisdiction to convict someone of that? I feel like maybe that's what he's trying to do, but again, I could be wrong. Okay. Now you indicated that you were going to do this sexual activity in the tent. This was in Mexico. She says, no, that was in Belize. In Belize. Okay. So in Mexico was the forced oral, in Belize was the intercourse. And he asks, and I'm going to piggyback, was that the only time there was sexual intercourse? No. He says there were other times? Yes. How many times do you think there was sexual intercourse? Maybe 2 or 3. Okay. And it was in Mexico after that. Okay. And so in Belize, and then you guys went back to Mexico, there was more sexual intercourse. Yes. Part of your response to the state was that he broke your virginity, and that was the only time that you described for the state. You didn't describe the other times. Were people present the other times there was sexual activity as well? And she's like, can you repeat the question? He says, previously you indicated that another person was present when he broke your virginity, correct? Yes. Okay, the other 2 times that there was sexual activity, were people present for that as well? She says, I can't remember if someone was in the room, like the bedroom before going into the bathroom, and so I'm not able to say like 100% that no one was there. Okay, and your response, you told the state regarding the sexual activity, which was the first time. Man, this guy just, the way he asks questions is like, he asked, I guess, how did it come about? And you said you didn't know if you wanted to have sex or not. Do you agree that that was the response that you gave just a few minutes ago? She's like, about breaking my virginity that I didn't know? Yeah. He goes, okay. And then the other times that you had sexual activity, you didn't testify about any of those times being a rejection or an acceptance. It was your testimony there was sexual activity. There was nothing else to say beyond that. She goes, can you repeat your question? So she's being really smart. She's asking for clarification. He's basically trying to get her to say,
Trying to
that,
trick her up.
I never said no.
Trying to trick her
That's what
up.
he's trying to get her to say, which is just so frustrating. He's trying to do it in a way that she doesn't even realize she's about to say, like, oh, I never verbally gave him a no. But it doesn't sound like she gave him a yes either, which is maybe more important. The other 2 times that there was sexual activity, is there anything that stands out about those other 2 times? And she goes, besides the times I'm talking about, she goes, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. So his penis is very large, and he would always tell me that I was small. And it always just felt very painful, and I would be, I would scream. He says, okay. And she says, and that was a common thing. He says, okay, let me ask you a more direct question. The other 2 times, was it against your will that there was sexual activity? She says, I'm not sure how to answer that question. Okay, you've also indicated that, let me make sure that I have my dates right. In Mexico, the oral took place. Yes. So what he's trying to do here is get her to admit that she never said that she didn't want to do it. And she's trying to answer the question in a way that she's not committing perjury by saying, no, like, I never, she's trying to make sure she's honoring her experience because she was coerced into doing it. So it's like, she may never have said, no, I don't want to do this, because she couldn't say no. Because if she said no, she would get beaten. So he's trying to prove, oh, well, you never actually said no. And she's trying to say,
he was putting his hands on
because
every female that was, including dudes, he was putting his hands on.
Consent, like consenting, because if I don't consent,
and he just will.
It's not real consent. So you told him
taking him like he wanted them to be
correct? Yes, and instead
wanted females to be boys, basically.
Yes. Okay. Now you didn't leave after that incident, though, correct? No.
Allegedly.
As a matter of fact, I think your testimony is that you stayed for an additional 4 more years. Yes. Okay. And for that 4 or 5 years you were in there, you didn't ever report that to law enforcement at any time. Classic. Because most women don't, because this happened.
Yes, Miss
Did you call your mother,
yes.
or was your mother aware of where you were for 4 or 5 years? Sometimes when I talked to her, and it was probably like a handful of times in all those years. How many times per year do you think that you would speak to her? Maybe once a year. Okay. And your mom, who I'm assuming loves you as most moms do, did she ever ask you where you were?
That's why Miss I'm trying to, send awareness, because
no,
the young adult kids be on the internet like that, and we don't want our young adult kids. Well, I don't have no kids, but the young adults to fall for none of this
because I had a baby.
Wicked stuff that is on this internet.
My mom for like a day or 2 in Seattle. Okay, so you left and went to Seattle. Yes. One of the members of the group, paid for my travel. So someone paid for you to travel. That sounds like a fairly costly flight. Yeah, it was me and Velvet and her child too, and we all went to my mother's house. And you flew to Seattle and turned around and came back the next day. It was about 2 days later that they'd gotten out of jail, and they told us to meet them in California. So you're at home with mom. What year is this? 2020. So during COVID. Yes. All right. So you're able to leave, but you come back. Yes. So in April of 2022, you finally leave the group after Mr. Bishop is arrested, correct? Yes. So this is why it's so important to have the expert witnesses come in, so they can help the jury and the judge understand how, well, yeah, she freely went back.
And I'm glad of that too, to make it that the expert witness is coming in, and
the other wife,
the other expert witness that work with abuse,
so it's not even like she could leave.
Stuff like this.
Reported back to Eligio, like who can you trust in a group like this? So he says, you indicated that you didn't have access to money. Was that for the entire 4 or 5 years that you were in the group? Yes. And so the ticket that you got to go from Hawaii to Washington, then back to California,
no money,
testimony that someone else
barely eating,
yeah, it was one
losing weight,
and food and other things
in mind control.
Time frame. Someone else paid for those things. Yes. You indicated there was physical abuse. Were you ever injured as a result of physical abuse by Mr. Bishop? Yes. Okay. And how were you injured? So he's trying to paint this picture like, well, everything, all your needs are taken care of, right? Like, didn't you have money for food? They paid for your travel, like. But I think that the other lawyer did an excellent job of explaining what cultic control kind of looks like. In Atlanta, in the Arbor Chase house, he told us, all the women, to get down. And this is trigger warning, DV, so please just take care of yourself. You can fast forward probably like a minute if you need to. He told us, all the women, to get down, face down on our stomachs, lay flat on our stomachs, and he came around to each of us. And when he came around to me, he put his foot on my head and put all of his weight on it. So my head, my face was like in the carpet, like smashing my head in the carpet. And then after that, he slapped me in the face and told me it was because of my ancestors, because of your ancestors. Yes, the things my ancestors had done that I deserved it. And, you know, because the women in my family were disrespectful for men, I needed, okay. And that, what was done to the other women as well. Yes. So every woman that was present, that was done to, yes. How many other women roughly were there? More than 5? There were about 6 of us. Yeah. Approximately 6. Yeah. Well, my last question for you, you made videos with the group as well, correct? And you recall making a video sometime in April of 2021. She says, I made a lot of videos. Do you recall at any time out of all those videos you made that you ever made any allegations against Mr. Bishop for sexual acts against you? I never made a video saying that, no. Okay. In fact, in April of 2021, you made a video since he was, I guess, April of 2021. Yeah, you made a video in support of Mr. Bishop since he has been in custody, correct? She says, oh, April 2022? Yes. She goes, you said 2021. Yeah, I was supporting him online for a few months. Lawyer needs to get his dates of his client's incarceration right. You know what I'm saying? And you actually gave and talked a while about Mr. Bishop and the good things he was doing. Yes. In April of 2022. Yes. And you don't dispute that was you on the recorded video. She says, no, that was me. And so again, it might feel like, oh my gosh, this is a smoking gun. She's supported him before, but she was most likely forced. I mean, we've seen evidence of him forcing women onto lives and forcing them to look like they're happy to be with him. And they literally look just like they have no life.
And they got videos.
So
Mr. Miku, they got, the prosecutor got videos of everything that what they were saying about him.
So the victims or survivors lawyer is asking her the first line of questions. And after verifying name and age, he asks, when did you first come to learn about Alicia Bishop? In 2017. And how old would you have been at the time? I think I was 19 or 20.
Now that's the wife of.
That is so young.
That's the wife of Alicia Bishop. She was 19. Her name is
It wasn't
Velvet.
him originally. It was with someone that was part of
She
the group. At
19 when she went there, and she gave up her scholarship
She
money.
got involved with someone else in the group who convinced her to join the group. She says, me and him developed an online relationship, and that led me to joining the group.
She gave up $3,000
in 2017. Do you remember any more specifically, like fall, winter, spring, summer? It was around April. And where was the group located at that point in time? In Costa Rica. Okay, what was appealing to you about the life that the group offered? He says, at the time, I was on a spiritual journey seeking knowledge, and I was attracted to his teachings. I wanted to live in community. That was practically why I joined. And then he asks, brilliantly, and what was going on in your life at the home? I guess 2 questions. Where did you come from? Like, where did you go from when you went to Costa Rica? I was living in North Carolina at the time. That's where I was originally from. And then the second question is, what was going on in your life at that point in time when you were learning about Mr. Bishop and speaking with Flo? At the time, I was kind of homeless. So that was, I guess, the main reason why I was seeking community.
This ain't his wife.
Family at the same.
This is another person before his wife.
Sees people online happy, living a great
life. Like her name was Syria. Her name was Syria. And she is the second witness.
Like, of course, she's going to want to be welcomed into this group. Okay, what was your first impressions when you first arrived in Costa Rica? I was excited at first. I was only there 2 days when I first got there. And when I first got there, we were at a waterfall and I was excited. So your first time there only lasted 2 days. Did you ever go back? I did. And how long between the first time and the second time? It was 3 years. So you were there for 2 days and you left. Yes. So then where did you go when you left? I stayed in Costa Rica, then I came back to the States. Okay. And so that would have been
Yes, to
2020.
me.
Yes. So in 2020,
I've been holding on
what's
this
going
story
in your
for
life?
a minute.
She says,
I didn't
again,
want
I
to do it,
developed
but sometimes you gotta
another
do what
online
God. I
relationship
just gotta
with
be
a member.
obedient.
Okay. And that led me
Obedient.
to joining again because I was still following his teachings and everything. Okay. And what is it?
So I had to pray
And they
like,
ended up
God,
getting
this is
married.
what you want me
And
to
what
do.
do you remember? Okay.
I had to pray and pray. Ask God, this is what you want to do. I really don't do it. I just watch, but God wanted me to go live and put this out here, awareness, because you got a person like that would take advantage of them, especially their mind still growing. In your 20s, your mind is still growing. There's still a lot that you got to learn. And for this 40-year-old man to come and try to take their life, they hood, they woman, they mind, they soul, he need to be under the jail.
So we're going to skip to, and when you arrived, what happened with your personal belongings? They went through everything. There was certain things that was dispersed, and then we had to share all of our clothing with the women. Did you have any sort of like identification documents, credit cards?
That's the second testimony that they had to share
I
clothes.
kept everything on me. And at that point, did you have a relationship with Bishop himself? No. When you arrived in Atlanta, this is where they are now in 2020, were you able to determine who was in charge of the group? Yes. And who is that? Eligio Bishop. And you gestured toward him. Do you see him in court today? I do. How were you able to tell he was in charge? Well, I've always known he was in charge because he was the leader of everything. And so everybody that's in the cult was beneath him, basically. I love that they're saying on record that it's a cult. Okay, and were your observations in Atlanta with the group, was that consistent with what you had seen online? No. How so? Well, at first I feel like everything was aligning, but then there was a shift with how everything was presented online as far as how he treated people, I guess. Over time, things was not aligning with what he was doing online. So what was happening in real life over time?
That it
There was
is.
a lot of verbal abuse
Their
that I
minds
witnessed
is very
by
young. Yes,
Eligio.
yes, Tamika,
Okay,
yes.
did it ever go beyond the verbal abuse? Yes. What happened? The first time I experienced abuse was on July 4th with Velvet. And what happened?
Velvet is the
Basically,
wife
we all
of
gathered
Alicia
in a
Bishop.
circle and watched her get beat. Watched who get beat? Velvet. Who was doing
Got to listen to this.
Eligio. Ooh, it's just like puts a pit in my stomach.
Watching
I
what
feel like at the time it was because she wasn't listening.
how to
him
explain
or
how
submitting
what
to
they
him,
did.
and that led him to beating her. So there were rules in the group, yes. And who did the rules come from? Eligio. And what sort of topics or areas did the rules cover? When I first got in Carbon Nation, one of the rules was I wasn't allowed to communicate with the men. We were all separated. There was rules with eating, basically everything. They were isolated within the group. They were controlled of who they could talk to, how much they could eat, where they could go to the bathroom. Just like, what would happen if someone disobeyed a rule? We would have meetings about it. And did it ever go beyond having meetings? The meetings? No, it was just meetings. But this is also could potentially be like a public embarrassment tactic.
And that's
Like
what it
we're
is,
having
a public
We're having a meeting about
a public
you
embarrassment.
broke this rule, and all of us here are allowed now to berate you because you broke the rule. And now because of you, we have to have this meeting because you broke a rule. Now you get to waste everybody else's time by talking about the rule that they didn't break, you did. So they can all blame you. You know, it creates this like energy that everyone's against each other. Everyone's like a little Eligio warrior, just like looking out like, oh, well, she broke this rule. He broke that rule. She broke that rule. There's no real community or union or anyone. No one's able to like team up and talk about their experiences because they might get reported on or publicly humiliated. So within the group, from your experience, were you
couldn't trust nobody there?
No, I would have to.
None of that.
And there were rules related to romantic relationships. Yes. What were those rules? I feel like there wasn't really rules. It was more so control. Like if you didn't want us in a relationship with somebody, then we weren't allowed to be with them. Okay. And there was a certain point where I actually had to separate from my relationship. How did that happen? This was when we were in Mexico. He separated all the men and women and claimed that all the women had to be in a relationship with him. He claimed that all of the women had to be in a relationship with him. He separated
Every
the
female
women
had
from
to
the
be
men
with him.
tore apart their relationship. So all these men that had created romantic relationships with women to lure them into the group, now Eligio's like, no, you guys can't talk to each other.
Can't be with them.
All of these women are going to be with me.
That's me.
And how long?
Basically, that's what he was saying to these females, just luring them there.
In 2020 or something.
Taking advantage of them.
Else. Yeah, all of this was around the same time. So you're all in Mexico. And what were the living arrangements like? Were you in a house, a tent, something else? We were in a house. Okay, and was it one house or more than one house? There was a house for the women and him, and then a house for the men. Okay, and who decided who got to sleep where? Eligio. Okay, did anything happen that made you believe that the defendant, Mr. Bishop, had developed a sexual interest in you? Once we were all separated, yes. What happened? There was a moment where I kind of got in trouble because at the time I had to approach him a certain way. What do you mean? We had to approach him as my king or whatever at the time. So if you didn't address him as my king, he would basically hurt you. And this is coming whenever you entered his presence, basically. So he was in the room with Velvet and I entered the room. I didn't approach him as I was supposed to, and he made me do squats because that was kind of like a discipline thing. Squats. This means like the exercise. And then she goes, and then that led him to coerce
picking out the key words.
And how did that happen? At the time, I can admit that I was vulnerable because I was separated from my relationship, and I feel like he knew this, and it was his moment to take advantage of me sexually. And what did he do? He sexually assaulted me in her rear end. Did you want to engage in sexual activity?
No. Rear end.
I feel like at the time I didn't tell him, but I didn't want to because she would probably get hurt. And if she resisted, he might make it a more violent experience.
Right.
She says, I feel like I was in a position where he was in control and I was vulnerable. And at the time, I had just watched.
And that is the R word.
Beat by all of the
all day long.
A lot for me.
R word.
I didn't say no, but I was resistant to it. I didn't want.
R word 101.
Is that what you said? She said, I was in resistance, but it happened. It was forced. And when you say, just to be fair, when you say sexually assaulted in the rear end, what do you mean? What part of his body touched yours? His penis. Actually, he ripped me. So I went to the bathroom.
She got ripped.
These other women came back to check because I was bleeding.
She got ripped.
I was in pain, and that's what was happening afterwards.
Bleeding on the
and
butt
after
behind.
That, I feel like
butt.
I think it was a day or two later. I left the home with all the women and went home with the men because I no longer wanted to be there. And how long did you end up staying with the group after that? Just a few days. Did you ever go back? No. And she never reported anything to Mexico. It's like, how could she? She probably just wanted to get out of there, you know? Like, I feel like if you're in a foreign country and you're traveling with someone, I mean, it'd be one thing if you were in that foreign country and someone who was a local there had done something to you, but if you're traveling with a companion and that companion did something to you, it would be even more difficult to like go report it to an authority who you're not familiar with if you even speak their language, if that makes sense.
Right.
So all in all, in 2020, from the time you got there until the time you ended up leaving, how long do you think you were there?
True crime is gonna be there to record
to record,
to
forward,
be in the courtroom, to get all the footage.
She came from North Carolina, and then he wants clarification on how she left.
He wanted to be in the light.
And returned in 2020.
Mr. Mickle, so he is in the light right now. He got his light. He got his shine right now.
Because
he gonna even have his shine.
So
when he go to the big house.
You met him again in Atlanta, but then you guys were relocated to Mexico. She says we were in Mexico, Hawaii, California, and Vegas. Those were all of the places I was with them. And the judge asks with the group, yes, Mexico, Hawaii, okay, Vegas, and California, and Atlanta. That was all in 2020, like during quarantine. Yes. What were you doing in those locations? Taping, visiting? Did you stay in those locations? What did you do in those locations? She's like, we all stayed in the house. Each location we went, besides Vegas, we were planning to stay there or live there. But ultimately, you ended up back in Atlanta? Yes. You indicated that you were in a relationship with a guy named Jacob, who you ultimately married, right? Yes. So, Jacob, did that relationship start when you were in Atlanta in 2020? Yes. And so it's only during the time that you were in Mexico. When were you in Mexico? 2020 or 2021? And then she corrects herself. It's actually 2021. You met the group again in 2021. You met him again in 2020 or 2021? 2021. Okay, so all that traveling happened. I'm discovering all of this with you guys too. I forgot when I first read this that this had happened, but so they weren't traveling around during 2020 to all these places. They were in Hawaii at one point, but they were traveling.
And they got kicked out of Hawaiian
in 2021
for touching the turtle that they weren't supposed to touch. And they was doing the COVID.
I understand.
Well, the C word, my fault.
Yes, in 2021.
I retract that.
Writing a statement. That
YouTube.
statement happened to be after Bishop
That was
arrested,
doing the
correct?
C
Yes.
word.
You never made a statement to anyone before.
And they got
I
kicked
spoke
out
about
of
it. I
Hawaii.
didn't make a statement, but I did speak about it on a live one time. That's all I did though. And what they would communicate on was an app called Bigo Live, BIGO. So there's just some clarifying.
And I was talking about
here.
Bigo.
And he asked,
That's
okay,
where
it's
all the
live
crit-
and it's gone.
all
So I
the-
think you can do either one. I'm not familiar with Bigo.
I call that
At the
app.
time, that's where I spoke
Yeah,
about it.
I call that
And that
app
was
the
2021.
devil's
This is after I left.
territory
Yes. By
because
that time,
that's
it was
where they all
2022. And your
started
statement that you
from
made on
is
Bigo
that
Live, was that
Bigo.
recorded? I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube. Yeah, it's on
Now
YouTube.
they coming on
The
to
only- yes, the
YouTube
only thing about
and
that situation is, as I was telling the story,
TikTok
it was cut off
and
by Jacob because that's really why
Twitter
he made
and
the statement, because at the time he didn't want me to, because he was still involving himself in
YouTube.
this.
All of it
Can
is
you
coming.
imagine
It
your
coming in
husband
out
still
in all
communicates
social
with the
media.
person that like did this to you? But again, it's that cult mentality. Like
It's
he was probably just
it's
brainwashed.
pimps out
And
here.
I remind
Is
myself of that sometimes.
all different
It's just so
type of
sad. Okay, and when you did the live, were you having communication
devil
with
with
somebody
shepherds
directly, or were you just speaking to
out here
whoever in the world
on
was
this
listening?
internet.
I was having a conversation with one of the former cult members. Her name is Star. So you're having a conversation.
That was one of them that
about
was
the
there
allegation,
too.
Yes. And was that one that you reached out to Star in order to initiate that conversation, or did she ask you? We were just conversating. Yeah, just conversating. And you think that video is still on YouTube? Yes. Okay. All right. And everything that you said in that video is accurate and honest, correct? Yes. So when you first got to the group in 2021, I think you said that your credit cards and IDs and other things you were able to keep, but your clothing was given to the other women. Yes, we all shared clothing. Okay, were you ever told you couldn't leave or anything along those lines? Mr. Bishop, were you directly told that you couldn't leave or anything along those lines? She says no. So again, he's trying to prove that, like, well, he never said you couldn't leave. You were there by your own free will. And that's why it's great that we have
There's other thing
witnesses
that he can't say because the videos don't lie.
What this coercive
One thing you
lies
say,
to
whatever you put
And I
out
really
there
hope
in
that
the
this
on the
doesn't cause them
videos
really
is
harm
there.
women, and,
Whether you
you
try
know,
to erase
they may
it,
have become
delete it,
super
or whatever
clear
you're
on
trying to
certain
do is
aspects
still
or
there
done
if
things
the
after they got out that
authorities
people
want
disagree with, but at the end
to
of the
know
day, they were
what's
still
really
victims of
going
the
on.
situation.
They're gonna do
And
their
they need
research.
justice for what they're going through, and we need to. It's great that we can see this as an example to set precedent for future cases as well. So when you were in Mexico, staying in separate houses, how long were you guys there in Mexico during that time frame? Just a few weeks. Well,
listen up, y'all. They're living in our.
So this is second witness to testify. Her name is Sari. I can't pronounce her name, but this is the second one.
houses, and on this day you indicated that Mr. Bishop invited you over. Was anyone else in the house with you during this time frame? Yes. Who else was there? All the women. Okay, so every woman that was a part of the group. And the act that happened, did that happen around other women or did they witness it? Velvet was in the room, but he told her to leave at the time. The only time the women knew about it was afterwards, whenever I mentioned that I was bleeding with some of the women and they helped me with that. Okay, which other women helped with the bleeding? From what I recall, it was Malia. Okay. I think she was the main one that helped me, but there were a few that walked in. There was Malia, Honor. I didn't tell them. He asked, did you tell them what happened to you? And she said, I didn't tell them. I think they just assumed already because it was just normal. It's just heartbreaking. Okay, but you didn't have a discussion about bleeding or anything along those lines. She goes, no, they knew I was bleeding. That's why they were in the bathroom with me. He says, sorry, I'm talking over you. You didn't tell them that you had just had with Mr. Bishop. It was just assumed. It wasn't like a conversation. Like it just happened. It wasn't a verbal conversation. Yes, it was just an assumption. Yes, because I asked them to check for me because, like I said, I was in pain, and that's when I found out I was bleeding. Okay, like, I just hate this type of questioning. It's like, can you be a little more freaking sensitive? Was that the only sexual contact that you had with him that you described at the state earlier? That act right there? No, there was more. Yes. Was that before or after? It was before. Okay, it was a day that he actually had sex with all of the women in the house. Okay, and was everybody in the same room that it happened? No. Okay, how do you know he had sex with all the women? Was it something that was discussed or was it witnessed?
Yeah, all the women. All the women. And at least about...
So something that was told to you later? Yes. By who? I heard it through Velvet.
But
okay, so someone else told you this.
10 to
You didn't
15
actually witness it.
females.
The day that
Young
happened, he
ladies.
was just finishing with one of the members. And so you witnessed him having sex with her. I didn't witness them, but they were on the balcony together, and I was walking on the balcony as they were about to leave. And did you witness them having sex on the balcony? No. Okay, so you just said he was finishing with her. What do you mean finishing with her? I was just assuming that they had just had sex based off of the energy that was going on, and just knowing that he had had sex with all the women that night. I just assumed that was the time that he did it with her. Were they clothed or unclothed? Yes, on the balcony. Were they clothed? Yes, on the balcony. Yes. Were there any condoms or anything like that on the balcony? No. I don't even think they used those, but I could be wrong.
They don't use the condoms.
question
No
asked.
condoms is used out there.
So he goes, and so when you were on the balcony,
No condoms were
you
used.
sex with Mr. Bishop on the balcony. Yes. Okay. And based off your testimony earlier, you indicated that he coerced you or you were vulnerable when you had sex with him in the bathroom at the later time. Yes. Is this the time that you were coerced or forced to have sex with him on the balcony? No. It was one that you intended to. She says, I did not intend. No. So you were coerced. I wouldn't call it that, but I feel like at the time on the balcony, it wasn't coercion, but I was being vulnerable with him, and that led to sex. But the second time, I didn't want no parts. Okay, so going back, I'm just going to skip through it because it's the same. He just makes her relive
What she went through.
So he asks, did you tell him you said that you resisted? When you resisted, was it an internal, I don't want to do this, or was it a Mr. Bishop verbal, I don't want to do this? She says it was internal. So it was something you were saying within yourself, I don't really want this to happen, but it wasn't going to him, hey man, I'm not doing this with you. Yeah, because I felt like I couldn't resist him. Okay, but it was an internal conversation. Yes. So luckily, her lawyer decides to redirect and ask her some clarifying questions. So he asks her, you said you felt like you couldn't resist him. Why? What made you feel that way? She says, I feel like a part of me was just afraid. Like I said, I was mentioning earlier, I had just watched the women jump on the other woman. It was like a lot happening in the house at the time to where I was afraid to resist and be put in that position of the other women getting beat and stuff like that. So great that
women's getting beat.
Questions, it's the example of she couldn't say no, because if she said no, she would get beaten. So if I'm
gonna get beat
correctly, I don't
or put in the bathroom.
So if I'm wrong, but are you saying that you?
Or this, I had other women slap them, beat them up.
Yes, thank you. So now we're going to move on to Velvet's testimony.
All right, Velvet is the wife of Bishop, Alicia Bishop.
So she got involved in the group in January of 2017. He asked how old was she at that point? 19.
She was 19. Two 19s, 124.
What was going on in your life?
That's three of them.
I was in college in Tuskegee University. I was studying agriculture, which essentially led me to carbonation because of the agricultural practices that they were interested in doing. Like, what was appealing about the group to you? The fact that they were in nature, because I was studying agriculture, that was my huge thing, to get back to nature. And that's essentially what lured me in the beginning. And then later I learned about other sciences that were talked about. And from the time that you first learned about the group, how did that progress? How did you begin communicating within the group? I reached out to a member initially before talking to anyone, and we had a conversation, and that conversation led to a romantic relationship. Once again, someone who's not Nature Boy is communicating with her. And this time, yes, she reached out to him, but it's not like she reached out to Nature Boy initially. It just feels like he has these like flying monkeys that he assigns to these people. We were talking for the past 2 weeks right before I actually traveled to Costa Rica to go live with everybody else. But his Olmec, his alias name, I was in contact with him. And
Olmec is who
when was
Vera was with at first.
If I'm correct, it was maybe the 26th or 27th day of February 2017. So where was the group located at the time? I believe it was Periscal, Costa Rica. And how did you get from New Orleans to Costa Rica? By plane. And did you bring anything with you? Just myself, passport, and some clothes. Okay. And the remainder of my school tuition. About just estimating how much money. $3,000.
$3,000. Every female, everybody, males and females, had to bring their money to a bishop, to Alicia Bishop. They had to bring their money, their possession, all that, and give it to him.
And had you met Mr. Bishop before that? I had not. Did you meet him the first night? I did. How'd that go? Little to no speaking. He hugged me initially. He didn't say much at all until the next day. And so what happened with your personal belongings? Your passport, your money? What happened with those things? My passport I had on me. The remainder of my tuition money, we called it a pot. So everybody puts their financial money in a pot where we basically pooled each other's money. And so I put it into the pot to contribute to taking care of myself and the rest of the tribe. And were you able to keep possession of your personal ID, passport? Initially, yes, but then I had to hand it over. I don't exactly know who held it, but it was held over because for whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure of the reason, but I did give my passport to be held out of my possession. And then shortly after, maybe a couple months after we got deported from Costa Rica because we weren't getting our passports stamped, I didn't have my passport on me or with me in my possession. When you went to the group, were you able to determine who was in charge? No, kind of, but not really. How long did it take you to figure out who was in charge? I would say it didn't really settle in until about the second week I was there. It became very clear and distinctive.
This is the last witness right here.
Who was in charge?
Which is the wife, Alicia Bishop.
Alias name. And when you say Nature Boy, what's his name? Alicia Bishop. Were there rules in the group? Very much so. And what sorts of topics did those rules cover?
Now listen to what he did to her.
Was the fact that we could not use the bathroom. That was one of my first issues there. I never not used the bathroom. And so that was a thing. But then Nature Boy, Eligio Bishop, would say stuff like, well, we're using the bathroom on the land so that we can become more self-sufficient and stop polluting our water or waste and stuff like that, which made sense, you know, logically speaking from an economical standpoint. And so I was like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Another rule was that the women had to be topless. If you wore a shirt, then it was like looked down upon, or there was a huge meeting brought up about why you weren't wearing a shirt. And that's very clear because there are visual pictures and videos of me with Lisa.
A lot of people don't want to listen to this.
I'm all for nudity,
but it's happening in real life.
It's forced like this. Other rules kind of really the women couldn't go out and make groceries. Like there were specific people to go do that, to get groceries or to mingle in the community. The women weren't allowed to leave. Other rules were like we couldn't watch stuff on YouTube. So information control. So we've got behavior control, information control, thought control, emotional control and manipulation, time control, isolation, literally all of the tactics of a cult leader. I'm just so glad that this is public information, logged. I really hope it does just
public information
because it really is setting the precedent. Like other people talking or other people giving their opinions, couldn't watch any of that. Another big rule was that we couldn't speak to our family. And if we did, we would get scolded. So what would happen if one of the rules were violated? What might be a consequence for that? Most of the time, a meeting would be brought up and then we would discuss the issue at hand in front of everybody, public humiliation. And then everybody would give their opinion, but it would basically be everybody bashing who's in the center of it. Whoever did something wrong, make them feel like really, really, really low. When you say bashing, you don't mean like physically beating or just talking. Verbal abuse, yes. Did it ever progress beyond verbal abuse? Absolutely. Did you personally witness physical abuse within the group on one occasion? And did you personally experience this? Many times, yes. And who would be physically abusive? Who was physically abusive with you? Eligio Bishop. What were some examples of what Eligio did to you? When I would decide to leave and be vocal about wanting to leave, he would obviously hold my credentials or my passport and stuff that was taken out of my possession. And so we had a child at the time, and he would use the child against me. So just so the court, we're all on the same page.
This
At some
got a
point, you
child
become
now.
pregnant and give birth to a child. Yes. And who's the father of that child? Eligio Bishop. When was that child
And
born?
she are beautiful.
January 18th,
She a
2019.
beautiful little girl.
And where was the group located when your daughter was born? Mexico. Her daughter was born in Mexico. You were saying that Eligio had been abusive with you. Yes, he would use the child against me to try and get me to stay. And after so many times of using the child and him verbally abusing me and using the child against me, I would still proceed to like try to get my things or walk out and stuff like that so that he would stop. And he would stop me by choking me. I have been strangled multiple times. He would hit me. One time he slapped me. He kept slapping me at the top of my head. My nose started bleeding. I was pregnant at the time. Another incident where he choked me
Baby
and I
was
blacked out.
in danger.
There was another time
Unborn
he smacked
baby.
me across my face, and then my whole side of my body went numb. Like my arm and fingers and stuff like that just went numb. There was another time he strangled me. On many times he strangled me. This was over 10 times, all by hand, and it progressed. We left Central America and we proceeded to come back to America, and the abuse got even worse. Whew, this is heavy. He strangled me a lot to the point where
Just
I couldn't talk or I
19.
couldn't breathe. So then if that would be the
Just 19.
Have y'all noticed the news using the Middle East to create a smokescreen? They're
Just 19. And she going through all this already. You know, just 19, just had a baby, didn't care about the unborn baby.
be like, well, let me just be normal and not try to show him any type of like restriction towards what he's doing so I can essentially be safe and keep my child. On other occasions, he actually kidnapped the child from me where CPS had to be called and I had to confiscate the child back from his possession. And it just kept getting worse. It just kept getting worse. Oh, it's so hard reading this. And ultimately, when did you finally leave the group? My final decision to leave and never go back was July of 2020. We were in California. I don't remember exactly where we were in California, but this was the day where it was the 4th of July, and so everybody was partying and stuff, and he got mad with me because I didn't want him to engage in flirting with the other women that were present. Had that been a point of conflict between you and Mr. Bishop about the way he treated other women? Absolutely. Okay, what was the issue there? Like, what was the disagreement? My issue, his issue, well, I can't speak for him, but his issue was that I didn't want to engage with him. I didn't want to be polygamous with him. I didn't want to engage in sexual activity with him. My issue is that he wanted to sleep with everybody and not make sure that everybody was healthy. He wanted to sleep with everybody and hurt everybody all at the same time, or not treat us according to what is, we're all human. And so he wanted to just give us bare minimum. And so I was like an advocate. I feel personally for my own sovereignty and the other women there and the other men there, but it never went as far as me, you know, because he always had the say so and he always had the upper hand on everybody. And so you were starting to say that came up again. He was flirting with other women. What happened then? When he started to flirt with the women, I just shut down immediately because I'm used to being strangled by him or just hit by him. And so I just calmed. I just went into my shell. I just left mentally. And then he started to talk to me, but I was ignoring him, and he got mad that I was ignoring him. I don't remember what led up to that point, but it was with me not responding to him getting mad, and him starting to hit me. And so then when he started to hit me, he ordered everybody to make a circle around me. This was about
part right here.
People at the time, no more than
It's sad.
17 to 20 people. And they made a circle around me, and he proceeded to hit me in that circle, picking me up, slamming me to the ground. I was fully dressed by the time he finished, about an hour worth of hitting me. Oh, sorry guys, just kidding. I was out of my clothes. I was in my panty and bra, literally in front of everyone.
Crazy.
Crazy.
He deserved everything that the law gonna give him. He deserved it.
I wanted my daughter, which on multiple occasions, every time he hurt me, he ordered women within the group to take every item out of my arms.
Take
so
her
he could
baby.
proceed to hurt me, which actually happened. They took the child out of my arms so that he could do it, but that was the incident that led me to the final decision to leave and never go back. And so I had to go through protection orders and everything like that after the fact, and a divorce after the fact. Wow. So how long between the meeting
Thank
and
God
after
that
I
she
left
got a
and when
divorce
after
from
left?
him,
This was
and that
from
was
July
her
4th
time
November,
to
I
get
wanna
that
say.
divorce
November
and
1st
push
or
on
2nd of 2020,
and get her
when I
life
finally
back.
was able to leave
Now
because
she
he
has
kept my
3 kids
documentation away
now.
from me. When I would show any emotion to want to leave
Oldest
or to
one,
want to
she
not
is
be around him
5.
or not want to be around these women, he would physically hurt me. So I just did
The
everything in
middle
my power to
one,
make sure that I can at least
she
try
about
to recreate a
3,
situation to where I
maybe
can get my
4.
documents in my possession, which I was able to do, and finally escape with my child. And when you say your documents,
And
was there
she got a
also
newborn
concern that
about
you
3
had
months
about making
old.
sure your daughter's documents were in order?
I was glad when
Yes,
she
there was a
got
concern for
she
that.
got the
That issue was
divorce.
out of my control because I wasn't able to provide
Mr.
5
Mika.
years worth of residency from the United States to pass citizenship down to her. He was able to get his credentials and do it, but because of his negligence for him to make sure that everybody is safe, he did not get her citizenship until July of 2019, which I have a copy of her birth certificate to prove that we smuggled her through borders from Mexico to Nicaragua. And then the Nicaraguan government forced us to get her citizenship because we absolutely could not travel like that. So by November 2020, you were able to leave. What happened after that with respect to, did Mr. Bishop continue to try to contact you? Was that the end of it? Like, just after that, you left? I just blocked everybody. I kind of went silent. I went back home to Louisiana and I was in the process of getting a protection order and divorce. But it was very hard for me to get the protection order because I needed evidence. And that was all done across the sea. So there was no way I was able to get that evidence to get the protective order. And he was also fleeing from house to house, so he didn't have a stable address for me to get him served. And the divorce, you have to be stationed and live in Louisiana for a year. So eventually I traveled to another state, and when I finally got to the state, I was able to follow through with the protection order, which was in Ohio. They granted me 5 years, which I was able to move forward with my divorce, which took near 2
So she got
years.
her
It cost money to
divorce
get a
in
divorce.
Ohio,
And
but
I was
her
finally granted in
hometown
October of
is
2023,
Louisiana.
if I'm not mistaken. I also have a copy of that decree as well. Did it ever come to your attention that Mr. Bishop had posted anything about you online after you left the group? Yes, it did. And when did you learn about that? Honestly, I can't remember the date. It doesn't have to be the exact date. It was 2020 because this was right after I left. What was posted? This was a video, so they're getting into the explicit material.
Just getting
This
to
was
this
a video that
place.
he took of me. 2 videos that he took of me. These were 2 different incidents that he forced me to do at the time. I did not want to do this. And when he did the video, I basically was just like, whatever, we're going to do this so you can get out of my face and we can just move on with this. And so he recorded it. It was me giving him oral. Both times, both videos were posted of me giving him oral. And his reasoning for doing that was to humiliate me. He would tell me stuff like, no man is ever going to want to be with you again. Just, basically trying to sabotage my
And
womanhood, for lack of a better word.
mind
So, yeah,
control.
that was
Mind
And
control.
you did not consent to that being
Mind
posted
control
online.
101.
I did not. And do you remember what platform it was posted on? Instagram. And how did that make you feel? The whole world saw me give him oral. Like, I can't even find the words. Like, I have to numb myself from that because
The whole world that
it's
watching
not
it,
something good to
watching
feel.
it.
So I'm just
Saw
reminding
all
myself
this.
at this point.
Not
and
only
moving
with
forward.
her,
Were the women
with
in the
another
group
young
allowed
lady
to say no
named
to Mr.
Janae.
Bishop? No one was allowed to say no to Mr. Bishop. What would happen if you or another person in the group said
He
no
went.
to him when he asked
He
for
went to the
something?
puppet with
When I
her
was physically
videos
there,
too.
most of the time, the other members would get verbally abused. I would get verbally abused and physically abused. For the most part, verbally. If you had said no to him or if he felt up to it, he would kick you out. He would tell you to leave, the camp in totality.
In the middle of the
I'm
night.
going to take you back to 2018. Were you with the group that year? Yes. And was there a time in 2018 when you were all staying in Mexico? Yes. And do you remember a time when there were 2 different houses? And do you remember Brianna? Was there ever a time where you were all staying
Brianna,
in
that's
the
a
home
second
and you
witness
and the others had
name,
to assist
Brianna.
Brianna with a medical issue? Yes. What happened? One day she came to me. I think
But
I was
her
like on Instagram or
nickname
something,
that
and
he
she
gave
came
her
to
was
me and she was like, I have an
Syria,
issue, and she was it was a very
or something like
alarming
that.
demeanor when she told me. And I asked her what happened, and she was like, come to the bathroom. She kept it very discreet, and when she took me to the bathroom, she said Eligio had forced himself onto her. And I asked her if she wanted that to happen. She told me no. She said he forced himself onto her, and then she showed me the results of him forcing himself on her. It was torn. I saw that it was torn. There was blood there, and I told her I'm not a medical professional, so I just told her, rinse it, and put some antibiotics on it. I'm not exactly sure because I was in the process of planning my escape, so I'm just like, I gave her some ointment and tried to do the best.
She was planning her escape,
assisting her with the issue.
While her
so
behind
it, back and forth,
is
when,
torn.
Another member came.
If he don't observe
kind of time jumped
prison time, my name is what it is, because you don't do young ladies like that.
To her, this other woman,
you know better.
And he was interested in her. They're on the beach shore, and I saw them having a conversation.
We understand he doesn't have his mama or his daddy, but do that make it right to do females like that, young ladies like that, even young men?
And I said, no. I said, I don't think that's a good idea. I tried to tell her, get her to understand how it wouldn't be a good idea, but she, was still on board with being in a relationship, and that made me angry because Mr. Bishop, he never had a conversation with me about who we were going to bring into our relationship. He always wanted random women just to come into our relationship without all parties agreeing. And then the judge asks, when you say always, how many times did that happen? And she says, many times. He brought many women. It's been over 20 women that he's brought into the relationship with him over the years.
Over 20.
Relationship with him to be polygamous.
He was ready to start that coat. He was ready to get full pledge in that coat.
I didn't want to be with her because I saw her intentions and was not in agreement. Was there a time when you observed Mr. Bishop and Kendra engaging in a sexual act? So this goes on to a sexual act that she witnessed. And then there's a cross-examination by the other lawyer Eligio's lawyer. And I'm just going to skip ahead because it's kind of like a review of stuff we've already talked about. Okay, so we're going to skip to past the review of information we've already covered. And this lawyer asks, you indicated that on one occasion you witnessed physical abuse of another person, but primarily it was verbal abuse of other people outside of yourself. Yes. But you indicated that you believe that you were a victim of physical abuse. Yes. But the physical abuse was primarily directed towards you rather than others. Is that correct to say? And she asks him to clarify. Okay, so we've just jumped a few pages because all of that.
See, it's a special place for all them type of peoples. It's a special place for how he did these young ladies and doing these young men. Guess what? When he get what he gonna get at, he gonna remember every bit of thing that he done did to any and everybody. He had I guess intercourse with a 40-something-year-old. She was looking for spiritual, and she had heart problems. And he told her to stop taking her heart medicine. Then after a year, she passed away. I guess in Puerto Rico or one of them places she passed away in. And they still ain't got justice.
He finally asks,
but if finna get justice now.
Chip wouldn't allow you to leave at certain times. When were the times that he did not allow you to leave? Where were you at when you were not allowed to leave? And she said, there were many, many times. At this point, it has been
she gonna get justice now.
I'm trying that I can go back to. And so one of the
even though she ain't and they ain't calling her name, but believe me, she getting justice too.
Prior to him getting with that other woman.
God rest in peace.
He didn't want me to leave, and so I actually ran away. But he had all my belongings, and I was in the middle of nowhere, so I just decided to go back. There was another time that I decided to leave. We were in Mexico at this time. He used the baby against me. Like, I'm going to run off into the woods with your baby if you try to leave and stuff like that. So he was like literally threatening to hurt the baby. And so on this occasion, he would talk to me and guilt trip me into not wanting to leave. And so I eventually decided to stay. There was another time we were in Mexico in that same spot. I decided to leave or wanted to leave, and he didn't want me to leave, but I just started walking towards the exit, and he made the men there at the time kind of barricade me into the compound. So I started fighting them to leave, and then eventually, because I wanted to leave so bad, he let me leave, but under the conditions that I would leave his daughter there. Or, oh my God. She wanted to get out so badly, but at the time, she didn't have her documents, and I didn't have my documents, so eventually I went back to the compound. Oh my. And so she says there was another time, one of the more recent, or the last time that I decided to leave. I couldn't verbally express that I wanted to leave because it would have resulted in physical abuse. So I just kept quiet about it and just planned my escape from like July until November of 2020. And then I was successfully able to leave. And so the time you were wanting to leave, did you verbalize to him that you wanted to leave? Yes. And did he physically restrain you from leaving, or you felt that you couldn't leave because you were concerned about violence? No, he physically constrained me from leaving, and then he held my documentation outside of my possession. I'm so glad she literally said that. Like, it shows the abuse and the control and the power that he had. And so the judge asks, how were you able to leave then? How did you get out? I mean, it's such a compelling story, and like, I feel like the judge is really wanting to get all the facts straight. She says, this is Velvet. I made it seem like I was okay with everything he had going on. The polygamy, the drinking of alcohol started, the smoking of the weed. And so I was just going along with all of the sexual acts that I didn't want to do. I engaged, and that made him believe that I wanted to stay. And so it softened him to the point where I can now have my documentations be closer to me rather than far, far away. And so when I diffused him with my compliance, the documentation, he would hold it closer to me. He would hold it in his pocket. He would have it in his fanny pack. And so I was like, okay. And then that's when I started to realize the more I engaged with him and made him believe that it's okay, that I'm okay with it, the more he's going to allow me to have access to the things that I need. So one night in particular, we went live. He drank a whole bottle of Hennessy and smoked weed on top of it. If I'm not mistaken, I never saw him with the blunts. There was just weed involved, and I just made sure that everybody was really drunk and high that night. And every time he went live, I went to the back to pack my clothes little bit by little bit. And eventually, he felt like the woman wasn't listening to him, so we called all of the women to the kitchen table. We sat at the kitchen table. We watched him stream on the live stream at the table for hours on end. And one of the biggest things, he liked the women to sleep together with him, not just sexual activity, but just sleep with him, which I never liked to do that. And so this particular night, I was just making a big, comfortable pallet and made it comfortable for everybody. And I made sure they went to sleep. And they woke up the next morning. Of course, they're hungover. And I found the opportunity to put my bags across the fence, had my baby harnessed to me. I walked and I walked until I was able to call a cab. They offered to pay for my cab to the airport and called my family, and my family bought me a plane ticket, and I was able to leave and never came back. Who offered to pay your fare? My sister, my mom, or my sister. I mean, so it's all so hard to read and hear again, like for her to have to answer these questions and repeat herself over and over again. So he asks, do you remember making a video where you went on and talked about how upset you were with other women and him being with other women? And she says, yes, I recall many videos that I made about me being upset towards the women, and mainly it was fairly so because, you know, they would take my child out of my arms, and I can only imagine what they would have felt like if they were in my position to have to be ordered around by somebody else to take your baby out of your arms so you could be hit, let alone watch you be physically hit over and over and over and over and over, and then make it seem like the girl who is being abused is the problem when the man who is abusing the woman is the problem. And, you know, I felt like in so many instances I stood up for them, and it was never probably, I guess she wants to say reciprocated. So I realized that I just couldn't continue to fight him for them for myself, because he is going to do what he wants to do. And so that's why it always resulted in leaving, but it never readily possible. That's why it always resulted in leaving, but it was never readily possible because he would make it so hard to leave. Wow. So now we're going towards the videos that the sexually explicit videos that he posted of her. Hey cats. My emotional support animal decided to make an appearance. This is some heavy stuff. Okay, so we move on to the cross-examination.
It's just about over with.
She's like nuzzling me, like, "Are you all right?" So we are now at the cross-examination of the explicit videos that were posted, and so he asks, "You stated there were 2 videos that were posted on Instagram." She says, "Yes, 2 videos were posted on Instagram, and 1 was posted on the actual site." Can you imagine? I mean, having an intimate moment
2 on
like
Instagram and 1 on Bigo.
Revenge. It's despicable. He just like would not let her go, and if she did, she was facing all of this torment. It's just
her
torment.
daddy was therefore
It's
God
funny, too,
rest in
because
peace,
this
Mr.
woman
McCass.
How did you find out it was on
But
the
her
porn site?
daddy
Just
was
curious.
fighting
And she's
to the
like,
end.
"You
He
can
passed
tell it's
away
on the porn site. It
after
has
she
the hub or
Velvet
something,
left
and you
out
click
the
all the
coat.
pops up,
He
and it's
passed
just a
away.
bunch of
But he was fighting for his
I feel
daughter.
like, you idiot.
He was fighting
I
for
know
his
it's on the
daughter
porn site
and his
because
granddaughter.
it's
He was
called
fighting to the
Hub,
end.
it's
And I want
on
to
there,
shout
and
rest
it's a
in
video of
peace,
me doing this
Mr.
thing. Like,
McCass.
I just don't. I feel like he's grappling
God
at
Cass,
straws to
rest in
try
peace.
to
Because he went
catch her
out
in, like, a
fighting.
lie or something.
He went out
So,
fighting for his daughter and
there's
his
a little bit more
granddaughter.
question, and then they go back and forth about the conclusion and following up on a new date. And that
All
was
right, this the end of this about Alicia Bishop. Again, they doing jury trial today. This is what you just listened to was from yesterday. Today they doing jury trial on the 26th. They had their first day in court with the jury there. So I don't advise nobody. I wouldn't want nobody locked up. Nobody. I would, but him, he got to pay for what he did to these young ladies and young men because he messed up their minds too. You still got out of all 15, maybe 20 of them, is about 4 or 5 that's still there, that's still fighting for him, that's still making videos that God is innocent. So, well, they can say whatever they want to say and do it. I guess some of them gonna testify too against it on the defendant side, but they words can't outweigh that what's on the videos that they always posting. So make a long story short on that, they even try to smuggle drugs in the jailhouse. They try to fly a drone so he can get the drugs off a broomstick. And they all got charged. But they let out. But the last one that tried to do that, she's still locked up. So she might be the key to get them to go on ahead, get them sent up because she there. And we ain't heard nothing from her. Her name is Zoka. That's what name he gave her. So she might be in protective custody. So she waited to testify against him. So, hey, I don't feel sorry for nobody that do other people wrong. I pray for your soul that you get right with God in there because you're not God. So thank you, Miss Tamika, for stopping by, listening to this, and let people know that hey, what's going on out here in this world, on this internet. Let it be known. It's time for us to speak out and not be scared. To speak out. And to the ones that's still serving up under his spell, I pray for them that they get some help. So So I love you, Miss Tamika. Y'all have a blessed rest of your day. And the one that may stop by and watch the replay, I hope sitting outside, share it out, because this is real. Because your young ones, I know you got these 17, 18, 19 on up, on this internet. And when they come across one of them like that, they need to be aware. I love each and every last one, y'all. Y'all have a blessed day. You have a blessed day too, Mr. Mika.